Before we get into today's story, make sure to hit that like button on this video so we can keep bringing you more. Subscribe if you haven't already, and drop a comment below to share your thoughts or your own experiences. Your support is what keeps these stories coming. I live in a historical dorm building in the Northwest USA, on the 5th floor of a 100-year-old structure with no elevator. The building is shaped like a U, and my windows face another dorm room across the way. I've been sleeping like a night owl recently, going to bed around 3 a.m. and waking up at 10 for class. I'd never met my neighbor across the way, never even made eye contact with him. He was a male, and he had heavy curtains that he always closed at dusk. By the time I woke up, they would usually be open again. One morning, I woke up really early from a strange dream I couldn't remember. My bed faces the window directly across, so I could see into his room. But since they had some things sitting on my windowsill, neither of us had a full view of the other. My windows were usually fogged up too, which I liked, since it kept people from peeking in. That night, at some point, I woke up feeling groggy. I noticed movement across the way and saw my neighbor opening his curtains. Instinctively, I leaned out of sight so he wouldn't see me, but I could still watch him. He pulled the curtains open with both hands, almost like something from a dramatic movie, and then just stood there, completely still. He didn't make eye contact with me, and it didn't seem like he knew I was there. He just stared straight ahead into my room. We stayed like that for about 5 minutes. Finally, he broke his gaze, turned, and walked out of sight. I lay in bed for a while, still tired, trying to make sense of what had just happened. It was about 7 a.m. Eventually, I got up, made some coffee, and tried to shake it off by watching YouTube videos. Later that morning, as more light filled the room, I noticed something strange on my window. There were 3 streak marks that definitely hadn't been there earlier. Because my windows are always fogged up from the heat inside and humidity outside, I realized these were finger marks on the glass. The unsettling part was that they were high up in the corner, a place that's hard to reach. I also realized they lined up with where my neighbor had been staring. I tried to push it out of my mind, but when I got up to put away my coffee cup, I noticed something new. There were now streak marks dragging down from the top of the finger marks across the entire window. I immediately called my mom, and she freaked out, saying there must have been an intruder. I reassured her that no one had been in my room, at least not that I had noticed. She asked if the streaks were on the outside or inside of the window. I carefully touched them, and as my finger left another mark, I realized they had been made from the inside. She told me to clean the window and see if it happens again. I did, but I can't shake the feeling that something is wrong. Maybe my neighbor saw something. Maybe he was in some kind of trance? I don't know. All I know is that it's going to be very hard for me to sleep tonight. I went on a date with a guy from Craigslist when I was 17 years old. I had put up an ad looking to meet someone, and one of the few who replied without sending the creepy message was a man named John. He said he was 26 and lived close to me. We exchanged emails, then numbers, and spoke for 2 days before agreeing to meet on a Friday night. He asked if I was single, what kind of food I liked, and told me a bit about himself. He said he still lived with his mother, but had the top floor of the house all to himself. He also said he worked part-time as a model. Judging from his photos, it was believable. When Friday came, John arrived in the silver 2-door car. He texted me that he was waiting outside. After checking my hair and makeup one last time, I told my parents I was going out with friends, then slipped out and got into his car. To my surprise, he looked exactly like his pictures. Pale skin, dark hair, dark eyes. He seemed a little older in person, but he dressed sharply and carried himself with confidence.
His kind smile and body language put me at ease. As we drove, he told me more about himself. He admitted he was embarrassed to live with his mother and worried I'd judge him. He was polite, friendly, and surprisingly normal. But as we got closer to the highway, something about him began to put me off. Nothing specific happened, but it felt like that moment on a date when the energy shifts and you realize you've lost interest. I told him I didn't feel well and wanted to go home instead of to dinner. At first, he reacted with concern, asking if I had done something wrong. I told him it wasn't him, I just didn't feel good. He then suggested we drive around for a bit before heading back, not wanting to end the night so abruptly. I agreed, since without his help, I'd had to walk over an hour home. But instead of turning back toward my house, he veered onto back roads leading toward his town, which was surrounded by dense forest. It was pitch black out. He grew quiet, no longer chatty, only answering my attempts at small talk with grunts or nods. His mood had shifted completely. Eventually, he pulled into an empty forest parking lot around 9 p.m. He parked at the far end, closest to the trees, with no other cars in sight. He just sat there, staring into the darkness ahead. I tried making conversation for a few minutes, then fell silent. Without warning, John got out of the car, closed the door, and locked it, leaving me trapped inside. The headlights illuminated the field ahead, which stretched about 20 feet before turning into dense forest. To the left was the empty lot and exit. To the right, another wooded path. John walked into the darkness. I tried the door, but it wouldn't open. I told myself maybe he had locked it by accident, but when I looked for my phone, I realized it was missing. I had left it next to me, but it was gone. He must have taken it. Not wanting to draw attention, I didn't search the car, just kept my eyes moving, pretending to stay calm. Then I saw him. John stood in the field, about 10 feet from the car. He was smiling, but it wasn't the same friendly smile as before. It was unsettling. I forced myself to smile back, pretending his behavior was normal. But then his tongue slid out of his mouth, wagging up and down as he stared at me. My whole body trembled as I tried to keep composure. Still holding eye contact, he unzipped his pants and urinated in front of me, grinning the entire time. I broke my gaze, staring down to the floor, praying it would stop. Suddenly, he stomped back toward the car and slammed against the window. Just then, headlights swept across the lot. Another car had pulled in. I don't know what that did to him, but his demeanor shifted instantly. He got back in the driver's seat, laughing like nothing had happened. He started talking casually again, asking what music I liked as he drove me home. When we pulled up to my house, I reached for the door, but it was still locked. He looked at me and said, "Promise me something. If you ever see me again, turn the other way. Don't say you know me. If I'm with my family, don't you dare speak." I agreed, desperate to get out. Then I asked about my phone. He said he didn't have it. I went inside, said goodnight to my parents, and rushed to my room. I turned on my computer and logged into MSN Messenger, which signed me in automatically. There were dozens of messages waiting, from John and from my best friend. The day before, while I was at my best friend's house, she had played a prank by switching 2 contacts in my phone. She changed my mom's contact to John's number. I knew she had done it because I saw the old messages still saved, but I never switched them back. That night, when John locked me in the car, he had texted my mom from my phone. But it wasn't my mom, it was another friend. The message said, "I'm sorry, but I've decided to move on. I found someone else. Please don't look for me. I'm happy being left alone." My friend immediately knew something was wrong. He texted back, "I don't think this is you. I know where you went, and I'm calling the police." He had no idea where I actually was, but his quick thinking must have made John panic. It explained why he suddenly shifted back to normal, and maybe why he didn't go through with whatever he had planned. Maybe it wasn't the random car pulling into the lot that saved me. Maybe it was that text.
My mom owns her own business and works extremely hard. This means she often spends late nights sitting on the living room floor with her work spread out all around her. One night in 2003, she was following her usual routine, sorting through paperwork and making piles. It was close to midnight on a Wednesday when the phone suddenly rang. She was surprised, but assumed it was my dad calling from work, since he worked third shift at a factory. When she answered, though, there was no reply, just heavy breathing on the other end. Creeped out, she hung up and immediately called my dad. He told her it wasn't him. At first, she brushed it off. We lived in a small town with practically no crime. We never locked our doors, and nobody was ever afraid of dangerous people. But after that first call, the phone began ringing every night, sometimes multiple times. Eventually, the man on the other end started talking. He began with things like, "Hello, Diane. You're so beautiful. I'd love to meet you." Soon, it escalated into graphic threats about assaulting and strangling her. My mom stopped answering the phone and told the police, but nothing was done. The calls continued relentlessly. My parents didn't have the option for my dad to stay home from work, and my mom convinced herself the threats were empty, so she carried on with her late nights, trying to ignore it. That was until one night when he got bolder. My mom was sitting on the floor in front of our huge mirrored cabinet, her paperwork scattered all around. The phone rang, but she ignored it as she usually did. She focused on a sheet of paper when suddenly a glimmer in the mirror caught her eye. She looked up and saw a pair of eyeglasses in the reflection. She spun around toward the front door, which had been behind her. A man was standing there, silently watching her. They stared at each other for what felt like forever. Then the doorknob started to turn. She screamed and the man bolted, running off into the night. My older brother, who was 17 at the time, came charging downstairs with a baseball bat, but the man was already gone. From that night on, my parents locked all the doors, something unheard of in our small town. When the police came, they searched the property. Behind the bushes under our living room windows, they found close to 200 cigarette butts. The man had been sitting there for weeks, watching her. They also found bike tire tracks leading from the bushes down to the sidewalk. The cigarette butts were tested for DNA. They matched a convicted offender named Robert Hahn, who lived right down the street. He was arrested while riding his bike and charged with menacing and attempted crimes. He already had multiple priors, so we assumed he would be locked up for a long time. But the reason I'm telling this story is because Robert Hahn was recently released from prison.
Enjoying the story so far? If creepy tales are your thing, don't forget to like the video, leave a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel. And make sure to turn on notifications so you never miss what's coming next. Got a scary story of your own? If you have a true horror experience you'd like me to share on the channel, send it to the email address listed in the video description. Your story could be featured in an upcoming episode. Now, back to the horror.
It has been about 10 years since this happened, but I still remember it clearly. My mother was involved too, though she doesn't recall the details as well as I do. I lived in a mid-sized city in the southern United States, where the main thing to do at the time was go to the mall. There was a movie theater and a couple of bowling alleys, but besides that, not much else. My mom worked at a department store inside the mall, and since I had nothing better to do, I often went with her. I usually sat in the break room while she worked. It gave me a reason to get out of the house, and if I wanted, I could walk around the mall or grab food from the court. Most of the time, I preferred staying in the break room, playing video games on my 3DS. My mom's coworkers were kind and often stopped in to check on me. On weekends, I sometimes convinced my mom to pick up my friend, who was also my girlfriend. Since we were both girls and I didn't want anyone to find out, we kept it secret. The mall gave us a chance to sneak in little dates, and to me, it was a cheap and safe way to spend time together. My girlfriend never liked staying in the break room. She always wanted to walk around the mall instead. At first, I thought it was because she just liked walking, since she enjoyed long walks in general. I tried to avoid it when I could, convincing her to just stop by a store nearby or grab food from the court. But over time, I noticed something different. She wasn't trying to walk just for fun. She genuinely didn't want to be in the break room. I finally asked her what was wrong. I expected her to say it was too cramped or that the flickering lights bothered her. Instead, she told me she could hear noises above us in the ceiling, like someone was walking around up there. I had already learned from my mom that there was a space in the ceiling for maintenance, mostly wiring, insulation, and equipment, not a place for people to hang out. Technically, someone could get up there, but it wasn't meant for that. I explained this to my girlfriend, saying it was probably an employee fixing something. She said it was fine, but she still didn't like it and preferred being anywhere else. Later that day, I mentioned it to my mom and asked what they were working on in the ceiling. She looked distressed and told me there had been no maintenance scheduled. Then she decided to show me something. She took me to the receiving room in the back of the store, an L-shaped space filled with boxes and junk. One side was used for deliveries, but the other led to the hatch into the ceiling. The store itself didn't have the equipment to climb up there. Whenever someone needed to go in, the mall's maintenance team had to be called. What horrified me was what I saw on the wall leading up to the hatch. There were gash marks scraped into the concrete, leading straight up to the ceiling entry. The marks were brown, uneven, and looked as though something had dug into the wall. I asked my mom if it was some kind of prank, but she shook her head. She said this wasn't even the first time it had happened. According to her, the gashes had appeared several times over the months. Each time, mall security and maintenance teams were called. They cleaned the wall and checked the ceiling thoroughly. They never found anything. After a while, they stopped investigating, writing it off as someone trying to scare employees. The only explanation anyone could think of was that a homeless person had somehow been living in the ceiling, avoiding detection during every search. After that, I stopped staying at the mall with my mom. Whenever I wanted to see my girlfriend, we found other places to spend time. I didn't feel safe in that break room anymore. Even though nothing had ever directly happened to me, the thought of someone crawling around in the ceiling was enough to keep me far away.
Thanks for sticking around till the end. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to give the video a like and leave a comment with your thoughts. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a terrifying tale. See you in the next one.